Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 2022 Home Buyer Happy Hour. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're really excited to show you first-time home buyers, the ins and outs of the process, maybe second or third-time home buyers, explain a little more of the process in depth for people to understand it a little better. My name is Jeffrey, and I will be hosting or moderating this event tonight. I'm joined by two of our wonderful mortgage loan officers, Brian and Whitney, who are going to be guiding us through the bulk of the presentation tonight. This presentation has been curated based on when you registered. We asked you to submit a question. We use those questions to build out this presentation. If you have additional questions throughout the presentation, down at the bottom of the screen, you will see a little Q&A function. Feel free to submit your questions there. I will be watching that on my second monitor all night. When questions show up, I will note them. And when we come to a normal break in the presentation, like when we're switching slides, I will ask our hosts to answer those questions as they come up. I think that's all I've got for you. I'm going to kick it over to our mortgage loan officers to get us started tonight. Let me unmute them. I have asked each of you to unmute.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
Excellent. Bye, everybody.
Okay.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our virtual home buyer happy hour. My name is Whitney Townsend, and I am a mortgage loan officer and branch manager at our Southside office. With me tonight is Brian Schleicher. He is our mortgage loan officer at our Watertown branch. Hi, Brian.
Hi, everybody.
So if you are new to the home buying process, buying a home can be confusing, it can feel overwhelming, but luckily our mortgage loan team here at Fort Community Credit Union is here to guide you every step of the way. When you signed up for this presentation, we asked you to submit your questions to us. So we have crafted this presentation around your questions, and we're going to address them as much as we can throughout this presentation. But like Jeffrey said, feel free to add questions in the chat and we will address them as we can. So let's go ahead and get started. First up here, we have our mortgage loan team here at Fort Community Credit Union. We have Maria Forrest at our Jefferson branch, myself here at Southside, Kevin's in Whitewater, Brian over in Watertown. Yolanda is our newest mortgage loan officer, and she is at our Whitewater branch. She also is Spanish speaking to help our Hispanic and Latino communities. And then we have Mike Gorman at our main branch in Fort Atkinson as well. So I'm going to kick it over to Brian. He's going to start us off with the first steps in buying a home.
Thanks, Whitney. All right, so we'll dig into it right away. So first steps when you're looking at purchasing a house is to figure out your ideal monthly mortgage payment and down payment first. So your standard down payment is going to be 20%. We do have options to go as little as 3 to 5% for the down payment. Getting pre-qualified, that is going to be a strong signal to the seller for the pre-qualification for when you put in your offer. So just a couple quick definitions for the mortgage payment. That's going to be the minimum payment that you would have for your mortgage each month, and your down payment would be the original lump sum that you would pay at the closing. All right. You want to go ahead to the next slide for me, Whitney? So there's some documentation that we'll need throughout the loan process. So the first one is going to be for income documentation. So regular W-2 employees, we're going to need the most recent 30 days of pay stubs and then your last 2 years of W-2s. For self-employed borrowers, we're going to need personal and business tax returns for the previous 2 years. We'll also need to see where that actual down payment is coming from. So that is the reason that we would need 2 months worth of bank statements for any savings or checking accounts that you would have, as well as any recent life insurance statements showing a cash value. Another income source would be rental properties. So we would need either the tax return or lease agreement to show the income from a rental property, as well as the homeowner's insurance declaration page. And then for additional funds for the down payment, we would be able to use retirement accounts as well. And if you have any child support, maintenance pays, or alimony, we would need verification of that as well, that we would be able to find in a divorce decree. And then last but not least, to actually get started, we would need the offer to purchase signed by both the seller and buyer.
So before we move on, Brian, we had a question come in
Yes.
from Fran. Does the 30-day enrollment W-2 statement have to be from same employer, or if you have continuous employment from 2 employers?
So we would need all W-2s from the previous 2 years. So if it's just from the same employer, we would just need 20, well, if we were going for right now, we would need 2020 and 2021's W-2s. If you had multiple employers in 2021, we would need all of those employers as well. All right, hopefully that answered your question on that. So what goes into the mortgage payment? So a common industry term is PITI. So what that actually means is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So the principal is the portion of the payment that is actually used to reduce the loan balance. The interest is the portion of the payment used to pay the interest on the loan. And then taxes, those would be your property taxes. And insurance, that's a combination depending on how much equity that you have in the property at the time of the loan closing. So the insurance would be your regular homeowner's insurance that you would be putting on the property for yourself. If you're above 80% loan to value, so that would be how much the loan is versus what the appraisal would come out to. If that is higher than 80%, there is a PMI or private mortgage insurance that we would have on there as well. And then contacting a realtor. So a realtor will help you also to find a home that fits your budget. Some needs versus wants. So if you need 3 bedrooms or 2, they'll definitely be able to help you figure out a good avenue for you on that. And then buyer's agents versus seller agents. So the buyer's agent, that's going to be your realtor. And then the seller's agent, that would be, of course, the seller's realtor. So working with someone that you trust on this for your realtor is very important. Generally, home purchase is going to be one of the biggest financial investments that you make in your life. So making an offer. So what factors influence the price? So I think everyone's kind of seen within the past year or two, the market definitely does influence the price on what other buyers and sellers are kind of looking for. So some contingencies that are common in the offer to purchase. So that would be a condition or action that must be met for the real estate contract to become legally binding. So some of those can include home inspections, pre-approval letters, anything like that. A counteroffer may be made in response to another. So know what to ask for and when to stop countering is something that you should really look for on that. So there are also a couple quick rules that you should or should not do when applying for a mortgage. So one quick common rule that's a little bit all-encompassing is just to not make any major life changes. So that would include any changes to jobs or becoming self-employed or quitting your job, taking out any new credit. So that would include buying a car, truck, or van, changing the way that you are spending on your credit cards. So using any credit cards excessively or letting current accounts fall behind. And then omitting any debts or liabilities from your loan application, changing bank accounts, spending money that you have set aside for the closing, buying any large transactions. So that would include things like furniture, originating any inquiries into your credit. So going off and applying for new credit after you have already started the mortgage application process, making any large cash withdrawals or deposits without checking with your loan officer first, or co-signing a loan for anyone. So that kind of ties back into any of those major purchases or applying for new credit. And now I'll hand you back off to Whitney.
Great, thank you so much, Brian. So just to recap, Brian went over all the documents that you'll need to bring in to get pre-approved for a home loan. Once you have a pre-approval and you have an accepted offer on a home, that last slide goes over all the things you'll want to make sure that you do not do that could jeopardize your offer. Now, assuming that we are in the stage where you have an accepted offer on a home, this goes into what a home appraisal is versus a home inspection. So we, as your lender, we're going to want to get an appraisal done of the property that you want to buy to ensure that it is worth the value that you're paying for the home. So when you write out an official offer to purchase, one of those contingencies is going to be a home appraisal. And we have a third-party appraiser that goes out to the home and determines what the value is of the home. So you may be asking, well, how does this person determine what the value is of the home? They look at the property that you're buying, and then they look at comparable homes. So if you're buying a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, they find similar homes that have sold recently that are also 3-bedroom, 2-bath, for instance. So that's how they determine what the value is of the home that you're buying. So this is something that we'll take care of as your mortgage loan officer during the loan process. On the other side of that is a home inspection. This is also a contingency that you can write in when you have an accepted offer on a home. And a home inspection actually goes to a little bit deeper level. It's looking for the actual condition of the home versus the value of the home. So things like, what's the condition of the roof? What's the condition of the siding? Are all of the outlets GFCI outlets? Do all of the windows open? Is there any issues with the paint? So it's going to be a deeper level look at the home to determine the safety of the home and the livability of the home. So an inspection isn't something that we as your lender are going to require for most types of loan programs. When we get into grants a little bit later, we'll dive into the inspection needed for the grants. But this is something that you as the home buyer can decide if you want to write it into your offer to purchase to determine, is it worth having an inspection done? And then what are you going to do with those results? So if it is deemed that maybe the roof has some issues with it or the siding, are you going to then go back to the seller and ask them to fix it before close? And then a big question is, would they be willing to? So this is something that you can work with your realtor on, but a home inspection, very different than a home appraisal. So we'll move on to the next slide here. Other expenses to consider. So there's some things that we as your mortgage loan officer are going to collect from you. One, the earnest money you'll give to your realtor when you put an offer in on a home. Earnest money represents your interest in purchasing the property. Typically, it's 1 to 3% of the purchase price. And when you submit that earnest money to the seller, it's showing them that you're really serious about buying the house, right? You're giving that with your offer. Like you're saying, I want to buy this house and here's the money to prove it. I'm for real about this purchase. So that's what earnest money is. Application fee here at Fort Community Credit Union, we don't charge an application fee, but that is something as you're looking at applying that you should consider that some lenders may charge you an application fee. An inspector, we just talked about that on the previous slide. So if you want to have an inspection done on the home, this is going to be a cost to you outside of working here at the credit union. An inspection can range anywhere from $300 to $500 depending on the inspector. So keep that in mind as you're budgeting for purchasing a home. And then prior to close, we are going to collect 1 year of homeowners insurance. So Brian talked about the PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. An insurance portion is always collected a year prior to when it's used. So we're going to collect an entire year of your homeowner's insurance, and we typically want to receive that receipt at least a week prior to closing. And then at the time of closing, the day is finally here, you're going to pay closing costs. So those costs are the costs for we as your lender to originate and close your loan. Things like the appraisal, the title work, recording fees, all of those are part of your closing costs. And then also escrow origination. So of course, escrow represents the taxes and the insurance part of your payment. And we're going to escrow for 2 months of the taxes and insurance ahead of time. So all of these are some expenses to consider. And when you come in for that pre-approval appointment with your mortgage lender, we can go through these specific costs with you so you have a good idea of what to expect. All right. So now I'm going to go into some different types of loans. So there's fixed rate mortgages. Just like the name explains, a fixed rate means that the interest rate is fixed for the entire term of the loan. Most often you'll see 30-year fixed rate mortgages advertised. That means that you're paying the principal balance over 30 years. And a fixed rate mortgage would give you the same interest rate over the entire course of those 30 years. By contrast, an adjustable rate mortgage, just like it sounds, is a mortgage that has an interest rate that adjusts usually annually, depending on the specific terms of the loan, after an introductory period. So for example, if we have an adjustable rate mortgage with a starting rate of 3.15% for the first 5 years, then you would pay 3.15% interest for the first 5 years. But then after that 5-year period, the interest rate would be open to adjust. Of course, there's a little bit more risk associated with this type of mortgage because, as Brian mentioned, rates and prices and everything are fluctuating a lot. So typically a fixed rate mortgage might be the best option for you. This is a great conversation to have with your mortgage lender to determine what type of program is best for you. We'll detail a little bit later all of the fixed rate mortgage options that we have at our disposal, including home ready loan programs, FHA loan programs, and some programs that are as little as 3% down.
Whitney, before you move on, would you mind providing an example of why someone would choose an adjustable rate mortgage and what might determine the interest rate fluctuation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for example, I had a borrower that was moving to the area for work, but they knew that the job here was only going to be temporary for a couple of years, and then they would be taking a different position in a different part of the country. So because they knew that they would only be living here for a short amount of time, but they were in a position to purchase, they purchased at an adjustable rate mortgage, knowing that they were going to sell the home before the rate adjusted. For other borrowers, let's say it's an investment purchase, or maybe their credit isn't such that they qualify for a fixed rate mortgage. We might offer them a fixed rate mortgage in-house, meaning Fort Community Credit Union underwrites the loan as an option for them to have home ownership. A caveat though with a ARM or an adjustable rate mortgage is you typically have to have 20% down. So that is a hurdle for some people to qualify for that loan product. What was part 2 of that question, Jeffrey?
What would affect the interest rate adjusting after that introductory period?
Yeah, so that's market fluctuations. Typically, there's a lot going on in the world now with everything going on in Ukraine. economic fluctuations, all of those things impact interest rates. But that rate is determined by what's published in the Wall Street Journal daily. So it's kind of like, you could shake that magic 8-ball and see what the rate's going to be, but your guess is as good as mine. So there's a lot of factors. And if we're in an ARM that adjusts in 5 years, it's really hard to determine what rates are going to be 5 years from now. So that's why there is some rate in that type of loan program. But for the right borrower, sometimes it's the difference between being able to purchase a home and not. Sometimes that's the best program for them then. So into the different types of down payment programs. So less than 20% down, and we're talking about 20% of the purchase price. So if you have less than 20% down, here are some loan options that might be right for you. We have the Home Ready Loan Program. This program starts with 3% down, and there is an education portion that is required in order to qualify for the Home Ready Loan Program. There's also an income limit based on the location of the property that you intend to purchase. Again, this is something that your mortgage loan officer would help you in determining if you're eligible for this program. Then we have a conventional loan. This starts at as little as 5% down. A conventional loan program is great for a lot of borrowers. There isn't an income limit to qualify for a conventional loan program. There is credit score requirements. We're looking for credit scores above that 620 mark or higher. Of course, the higher the score, the better, but we'll find ways to help boost your credit score too. If you're interested in purchasing, we can work with you along the way. There's also VA loans. Those are specifically for our veteran borrowers. There's FHA loans, Federal Housing Administration loans. These start with as little as 3.5% down. This program is really intended for borrowers with some maybe credit issues or maybe don't have as much financial reserves to purchase a home. And again, anything less than a 20% down payment is going to require private mortgage insurance. Now, private mortgage insurance is a great solution to help you get into a home if you have less than 20% down. Premiums, though, for private mortgage insurance can range anywhere from, I've seen it as low as $30 a month, and I've seen it as high as $250 a month. So keep in mind that when you're putting less than 20% down, you are going to pay for private mortgage insurance monthly as part of your mortgage payment. Again, the benefits, if you have the ability to put 20% down or more, you won't have to pay for private mortgage insurance. And as a result of putting a higher down payment, your monthly loan payments are going to be lower. All right. That's Whitney, a lot about PMI.
Before we move on, for private mortgage insurance, is that going to be determined by your credit score? Is it going to be determined by the status of the home? What factors go into that?
That's a great question. So PMI is definitely a risk-based product. So it's going to depend on your credit score as the borrower, the number of borrowers on the loan, and your debt ratio. Debt ratio is the amount of debt obligations that you have plus this new proposed mortgage divided by your income. So we're looking at credit, number of borrowers, debt ratio, and then finally the loan to value. So of course, the less money that you put down, the higher the private mortgage insurance could be in combination with those other factors. That's a great question.
We had a question roll in. Would you know your PMI payment before being locked in?
Before being locked into a specific property?
I believe so.
So we can guess as much as we can. We can run a quote given the specifics of a down payment and a purchase price. So if we have all of your income documentation, we've done a pre-approval, we have the purchase price that you're looking for, and we know your down payment, we can run a quote and get you a quote for PMI before maybe you select a home. Yeah, that's a great question. We can always circle back to more questions about PMI. So let's say you have put in an offer on a home, you've had your appraisal done, you've had your inspection done, you've paid for your homeowner's insurance, everything is smooth sailing, and now we're getting close to closing time. So we're going to want the proof that your homeowner's insurance, of course, has been paid. And then we're going to set up a closing time. We at Fort Community Credit Union love closing day. It's so much fun to have our borrowers come in, to finally meet them in person, because sometimes we communicate a lot via email before the closing. Sometimes we get to meet the sellers too, and you get to talk about the home a little bit. It's so much fun. But it is really important too that on that closing date, that you get ready for all of the pros of home ownership, owning your own home, but also to be prepared. There's going to be additional expenses with owning a home, things like maybe a water heater that goes out, making sure that you have an emergency fund for different repairs that come up with a house. You're going to start getting a water bill for all the water that you use. And all of those things, we can help you anticipate. We have a closing checklist that helps people understand what all the expenses are of home ownership. But unlike renting, if something breaks, you can't call a landlord. It's going to be on you to figure out who you're going to call to fix it, or fix it yourself. A little YouTube going on. So it's really important to reference this move-in checklist. I think this is maybe, Jeffrey, a follow-up that we can send out to everyone for different things that they can be prepared for after they move into the house. All right. So here is the mortgage timeline. So these are the different things to anticipate as we move along the mortgage pre-approval process, accepted offer to closing. So once you connect with us and we've gathered all of your application details, it's going to be about 7 to 14 days for us to process and underwrite your loan. It is so important that while we're going through this process of processing your loan, that you are checking your email and responding to phone calls as quickly as you can. A lot of times we get mortgage closings that are between 30 to 45 days. And that is a really short timeline to gather all the information that an underwriter might need to determine if you're eligible to purchase a home. So sometimes we need a verification from your employer that you're still working there, and we need it in real time, the same day that we request it. So it's really important that you're responsive throughout the home application closing process so that everything can go really smoothly. So we've got 7 to 14 days to gather all that information, another 7 to 10 days of the underwriter underwriting your loan, verifying your employment, verifying all your deposits, the funds you're going to use for closing, taking a look at that appraisal, making sure that the home value is okay. And then we've got another 7 to 10 days to schedule the closing, to make sure that there's time for you and the seller to get together to sign all your documents. I think I've said it 3 times already, but responsiveness is so important. Of the mortgage transactions that go smoothly, it's the ones where we have an open line of communication throughout the process to make sure that all of your questions are answered and that we can get everything done in a timely manner. All right. So moving on to home buyer grant programs. So we are really, really fortunate. I should probably pause quick. Jeffrey, is there anything in the chat that we should address before we move on to grants?
We do have a question from Jackie. We're trying to get a little more information about it. The beginning of it is, what about first-time home buyers? Is it still possible these days? If yes, what are the requirements? Specifically, Jackie, are you asking about a first-time home buyer loan? Yes.
Yeah, so the Home Ready Loan Program and that FHA loan with 3.5% down, those programs are specifically geared to first-time home buyers that maybe don't have an existing home that they're selling in order to use for the down payment. So those 2 programs, the Home Ready Loan Program, and then these grant programs that we're going to go through too, are both intended to help people get into a home who haven't owned a home before. That's a great question. And maybe some of these home buyer grant details are going to help address some of those additional questions as well. So we in Jefferson County and their surrounding area are really lucky that we have these grant programs to help first-time home buyers get into a home. There's two different grant programs. I'll go over the first, the Home Consortium, and then I'll hand it back over to Brian to go over the Federal Home Loan Bank. So the first one, the Home Consortium Down Payment Assistance Program. So both of these grant programs are forgivable grants. They're actually a loan that goes against the title of your property with no repayment necessary and no monthly payments necessary if you stay in the home as your primary residence for 5 years. So it's a really sweet deal if you intend to purchase the home and stay in it for 5 years. After that 5-year period ends, all of the money that you received as the grant is forgiven, which is just absolutely incredible. Each program does have some specifics that must be met. So the Home Consortium program, it started at $5,000, and for the last few years, the assistance was $5,000. Just last week, we found out that they have increased this grant program to $10,000. So this provides eligible borrowers with up to $10,000 to be used towards either the down payment or the closing costs. Over the 5 years, the first 5 years that you live in the home, 20% of that $10,000 is forgiven each year until it's finally forgiven in the final year. That would be 10% each year over the 10 years. So partial repayment of the loan would be required if A, you sell the property before the 5 years, B, you stop living it as your primary residence. Let's say you decided to move and start renting out the property, then you would have to repay a portion of the grant. If you transfer the title, the ownership of the home to somebody else, or if you apply for a cash out refinance of the property after you purchase it. So those are all the little, don't do it if you want the whole thing forgiven.
Whitney, before we move on, we had a question come through. Are these for Jefferson residents or those looking to buy a home in the Jefferson area?
So the down payment assistance here for the Home Consortium is anyone in Jefferson County, Ozaukee County, Washington County, or Waukesha County. So those are the specific counties, not the city, but the counties in which people are eligible.
I think the question might be if it's for people already in those areas or those looking to buy in those areas.
Right, those looking to buy. So the subject property would have to be located in one of those counties. Yeah, that's a great question. So the home must be owner occupied, meaning that you as the borrower must occupy the home as your primary residence. It has to be a single family home, meaning it cannot be a duplex, it cannot be a triplex, and it has to be detached, meaning it has to be a single family home, freestanding. And then the selling price of the home must be below the purchase price limit set by HUD. Right now it's at $199,000. And then also there is a income requirement. So the borrowers must have an annual household income at or below 80% of the area county median. And we have a chart later on in our presentation that shows exactly what that 80% is. So just to recap, you're looking for a home, the subject home that you're going to be purchasing in one of those counties. It has to be a single family home, and the selling price and the income has to fall within the limits of the grant program. And this is for already built homes. So I've had people apply before who want to build a home. This does not go towards construction or building your own home. This is already built single family homes that you would be purchasing from a seller.
I have a couple of questions for you before we move on. Would someone qualify for these grants if they owned a home with their ex-husband, but he kept the home and this person currently rents?
It would depend on how long their name has been off of the title, but typically yes, as long as their home is their name is no longer on any ownership of their previous property. Do you have anything to add to that, Brian? I believe
they would have been able to be on the title of the property. It just needs to not have been within 3 years.
3 years.
And I know we're kind of still cruising through this section, but do we offer any grants for purchases in Dodge County?
That will actually be something that I will be going over in just a minute.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, great questions. These are really terrific programs, and will certainly help you guys as you're going through the home ownership process. We can determine right from our initial meeting if any of these programs are one that you're eligible for. So again, with the Home Consortium grant, your total household income debt to income ratio has to be less than 50%, very similar to the guidelines to qualify for a mortgage. And then you have to attend a counseling session prior to receiving these grant funds. And later on, we'll share with you specifically what these education programs are. There's a lot available in the area. Jefferson County with Roxanne Witt, they no longer provide grant counseling, but we have several different alternatives, many via Zoom and offered at night that would be great alternatives to that program as well. Another thing we are going to circle back to here is about the inspection. So I mentioned before that there's an appraisal done of the home, and then there's an optional inspection. With the Home Consortium grant, there is a required inspection done by a specific inspector, and the home has to pass the inspection before the grant funds are going to be released. It's $10,000 of grant funds, so they want to make sure that this home is safe and livable before they extend these grant funds to the borrower. This next slide here shows specific items that are commonly found on the Home Consortium inspection. So feel free to take a screenshot of this if you're on your phone. We can certainly send it as a follow-up as well. But these are things that the seller, if you are qualified for this program, that you'll want to make sure that you tell your realtor, so that your realtor, as you're going through homes, they can look for these items as well to let you know if there could be a possible concern with the home. One amazing thing about the Home Consortium grant program is if any of these items fail the inspection, there is a program that can be used in conjunction called the post-purchase rehab program, where you can get additional grant funds to fix any of the things that fail on the inspection. So it's a really terrific program, but just be aware that these might be some concerns as you're going through a home to look out for if you are going to be going for the grants. So we can send this as a follow-up as well, but I'm going to move on here to the next program or next part of our program. So Brian, if you, oh, it looks like Jeffrey, was there a question?
Yes, we do have one more, but sorry to derail the transition. What if someone's debt is more than half their income, but they have a credit score of 800? Are there ways we can work with them to help them qualify for these grants?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of different factors that go into qualifying for a mortgage. And when we do that initial meeting together, determining what their debt to income is, some of those credit issues or debt to income issues are things that we can help resolve with the member, or give some suggestions about, okay, maybe you don't qualify today, but here are some steps that you can take over the next 3 months, 6 months, so that you can be in a position to buy. But certainly if you have excellent credit, there's a lot of different pillars when it comes to home ownership, right? If you've got a really solid employment, you've been working and earning income for quite some time, you have an excellent credit score, maybe you have some of the down payment and it's just that debt to income piece. Well, let's work together and try to find a solution to get you into a home. So there's a lot of different pillars. If you have a couple that are really strong and one that needs some work, we can definitely work together on that. Yeah, great question. It's kind of like a puzzle, you know, and every person's situation is unique. And that's some of the fun for us as mortgage loan officers, is getting to know you, getting to know, you know, your life and what your goals are, and then trying to find a solution together to make it work. So I'm going to hand it over to Brian now. He's going to go through the other grant programs. So we're covering 2 tonight. I just went over the Home Consortium, and he's going to talk about the Federal Home Loan Bank.
Thanks, Whitney. All right, so the Federal Home Loan Bank, the grant program that they use is the Down Payment Plus program. So as one of the questions asked earlier, this one is actually not restricted by the couple of counties that Whitney had previously mentioned. So this one provides eligible home buyers up to $6,000 to be used towards their down payment and/or closing costs. So if you were in the couple of counties that Whitney had mentioned, that's up to 16,000. So that's quite a decent chunk of change right there. This one actually forgives part of the loan each month. It does equal out to that same 20% per year. So it is still a 5-year forgivable grant. And then for these grants are on a first come, first served basis. These are funds that are given to us to give to you guys, our borrowers, from the federal government. All right. So eligibility requirements. So a lot of the same eligibility requirements are used for this as the Home Consortium grant. So that would be 80% of that median income for the county that Whitney had previously mentioned. One of the differences for the requirements is that buyers need to use at least $2,000 of their own funds in order to qualify for that full $6,000. So that can be anything from earnest money to down payment to home inspection to first year of homeowners insurance or closing costs.
Brian, I've got a question,
Yes.
which I think is a very good one. Because COVID disrupted a lot of people's like normal work environments, and also like their ability to do their job, what if there's a gap in someone's employment because of COVID? Does their unemployment count as income as they're applying for a home loan or for these programs?
So if you are working again, we would be taking your income as it is now. As far as an employment goes, we do not typically use that in our income consideration.
And to piggyback off of that too, Jeffrey, like Brian said, it's really important that as we have that initial conversation, that if there was a gap in employment, that you disclose that during the application process. Because let's say you had a gap due to COVID from March until June. When we get your W-2 for that year, it's going to look like you didn't earn as much that year because of the gap. So it's really important that you have those dates. Maybe for that first appointment, it'd be really helpful. What were the dates that you started employment, the date that maybe you were laid off due to COVID or had an extended absence, and what was the date that you started back? Having those specific dates are really important, and it can help keep things moving smoothly throughout the process. Great question.
All right, so it's actually going to be the same counseling that you would be using for the Home Consortium. So that's actually very helpful. So you're not paying for counseling twice. You can use that same counseling for both of the grants. One difference though is an inspection is not required for the Down Payment Plus program. And here is that median income kind of graph for the different counties that we would be looking at, and it does go by household. So you can see for Jefferson County, if it's a single person household, that'd be $44,150. We would be taking 80% of that, and that would be the income limit in order to qualify for those grants. And then it basically just goes up, obviously, from there, depending on how many you have in your household. Great. So I will hand this back off to Whitney to wrap it up.
Thank you, Brian. So I know we gave you guys a lot of information in a short amount of time. There was a lot of numbers and everything like that throughout this presentation. But I just want to assure you that we know all the numbers on our side of it. So you just come to us with your financial situation, with your employment details, with what your goals are, and then we'll plug in the pieces to find the right programs that work for you. We'll do the determining if you're eligible for the grant programs. We just need to meet you guys right where you are and find a solution that works for you along the way. So next up, here's our contact information. Feel free to screenshot this if you have any follow-up questions after this presentation and you want to reach out to us personally. And Jeffrey, do we have anything else in the chat that we should review?
So right now, nothing in the chat, but feel free to ask some more questions. I do have some a couple of similar questions that we had on the registration that didn't quite fit in this presentation. Some people were wondering about home equity lines of credit, home equity loans, in relation to like, how do you use those once you have a mortgage? And also, can you use that to like get a second mortgage on a different home? There were, I think, 3 or 4 questions about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So a home equity line of credit, just like the name suggests, it's using the equity that you have in your home, and we're using that to determine what your loan amount would be on the line of credit. So when you're purchasing a home and you're only putting 3% down, you're not really starting off in a great equity position from the get-go, because you're only putting 3% down between the value or the purchase price and your loan amount. So we don't have a lot of room there. If you're in a situation to put a 20% down, or you purchase a home and you make some significant improvements to the home, you might be able to increase the value of the home within maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years from the time that you own the home. Let's say that you purchase a home at $200,000 and your loan amount is $180,000. And then you do some improvements to the home. Maybe you finish out the basement or something like that and increase the value of your home to $250,000. The difference between those two numbers is the equity that you have in your home. So a home equity loan uses a percentage of that equity and then lends it to you for whatever home improvement projects, or if you want to use those funds as a down payment on an investment property. That's what a home equity line of credit is. But typically, if you're a first-time home buyer and you're only putting a small percentage down, you're not going to be in an equity position maybe right from the get-go. That would be something to revisit down the line. But that is how a home equity line of credit works. It is considered a second mortgage on your property because you have your first mortgage, and that home equity line of credit is in the second lien position. Anything to add, Brian?
I think you covered pretty much everything that I would have put on there. Yeah.
We've had a, oh, I'm sorry, if you're still going, I'll let you go.
No, that was a great question.
We've had a few more questions roll through. One, a clarification. There was a grant Roxanne had for new construction on a condo. Does FCCU work with grants like that?
So that would be a post-purchase rehab grant, sounds like.
It could be.
That could be. So
oh, Fran said no.
No. Okay.
Would you mind elaborating? Fran, would you mind elaborating in the chat, and then I will gather that while we maybe answer the next question. Do any of these grants apply to buying a home in foreclosure? And what is the difference in the process of buying a home that is in foreclosure?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there are some concerns in buying a home in foreclosure. One of them being, depending on where it is in the process of foreclosure, we as the lender don't know if we'll have the ability to do some of the necessary things that we need to do in order to qualify for a conventional loan, for example. We're going to need to have an appraisal done in order to get a conventional loan. And depending on where a home is at in the foreclosure process, sometimes we don't have access to the home. Depending if there's tenants in the home, if they've been evicted yet, there's a lot of different factors going on there. So it really is property specific in order to determine if a foreclosure home can, one, be eligible for a fixed rate conventional loan, and or two, if it can be used in conjunction with the grant programs.
Awesome. We do have some additional information on the previous question. One of our attendees had a session with Roxanne to specifically get a grant on new construction loan for a condo in Jefferson County. Do we know if that is still available, or is that something we might have to look for?
Yeah, I'll have to follow up with Roxanne in that. I did find out last week that Roxanne is retiring from her position. And so I can certainly connect with her on that too, regarding if there is a program available. It's not something that has been available to us here at Fort Community in the past. But if it's something that is new that they're offering or that she mentioned to you, I can certainly follow up with her before she departs.
That same attendee said that Roxanne cannot retire. I
Yeah.
would maybe recommend following up with
I
either
know.
Whitney or Brian via email that you can see on the screen right now, and they can look for those answers directly through Roxanne. We have another question that's come through. Can you buy a house in a county besides Jefferson, like Rock County? I don't know if it would be worth going back to previous slides.
Yeah, as far as the grants go, the Down Payment Plus is the one that is not restricted by county. The Home Consortium is just those 4 counties that we typically use that for. As far as the actual purchase of the property, we do not have any requirements on where that property is actually located.
Yeah, we have done loans for people purchasing all over the United States. You know, when someone is a member of Fort Community Credit Union, which is the only requirement that we have for someone to obtain a loan with us, is you have to be a member of the credit union here. And so if some of our members are maybe moving from here to Florida, we've done loans all over the United States, but typically, we do work in the area that we serve, so here in the surrounding communities, but there's no limitation for just a regular conventional loan. Yeah.
Ooh, good question. Is someone a member with us if they have a car loan through us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the benefits, we have a lot of indirect dealers in the area, and when you get a loan and you get communication from Fort Community Credit Union, you become a member. And we'd love to have you move your checking and savings and all of your banking over to us too, along with that car loan.
Someone said, what about a COVID loan? I think in response to the programs we had in place at the beginning of 2020. I would assume same situation.
Yep, so we did offer a COVID relief loan at the beginning of 2020. So if someone was able to get that COVID relief loan, they would also be a member of the credit union at the same time that they applied for that loan. We're not offering that COVID program anymore, specifically as it relates to signature loans or mortgage loans.
Another question, is the requirement on how much money is on deposit to qualify for a loan? Which I think might be dependent on the loan itself.
Yeah, that would be dependent on the loan itself. It would be really unique to that current loan application. There are times where we would need anywhere from 6 to 12 months of reserves. One good way to qualify for that reserve requirement is we would be able to take a statement for your 401k or retirement accounts. We wouldn't actually need to withdraw anything. We would just need to know that's available if you did need it.
Mm-hmm.
If someone is listed as a co-signer for someone else's car loan, do you think they would qualify as a member as it like pertains to applying for a new loan at FCCU?
I would say most of our people that are co-signers on a loan would also have a share here at the credit union. But in the event that they didn't, you can apply in minutes at fortcommunity.com to become a member. There really isn't any requirement besides living or working in the areas that we serve to become a member, and you can put $5 in your savings account and be a member. So don't let that keep you from applying for a mortgage with us. If you're interested in obtaining a mortgage through Fort Community Credit Union, we can help you open up a $5 savings and become a member too. So we can do 2 steps in one.
If we have any last questions to put in the chat, now is the time to do so. There have been some great questions. Thank you everyone who has submitted. And thank you, Brian and Whitney, for helping us through this presentation. It has been a delight to watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, and thank you for your great questions. As Brian mentioned, there's a lot of different ways in order to look at someone's financial situation and find a solution. So if you do have a 401k, if you're having trouble saving up for that down payment, there are options to utilize your 401k. We can help you on the financial counseling side of things to really coach you into a position of home ownership. You know, what would it take? How many months of savings would it take in order for you to reach your savings goal, to be eligible for the grant program, or to have that minimum $2,000 contribution to get the $16,000 of grant funds? So really that initial appointment with your mortgage loan officer, whoever you choose to work with here at the credit union, we can really help guide you to what programs are best fit for you, or what you need to do over the course of the next couple months in order to put you in a position of home ownership.
We had another great question, which I will answer half of and perhaps let you take it away from there. Someone asked who can they talk to, ask questions about to get set up and kind of start in the process. And what I will say about all of our loan officers at FCCU is that you don't have to have a concrete plan to contact them. Our loan officers, including I was going to say Brittany, which is your mortgage loan officer power duo name. Brian and Whitney will answer any questions, even if you think 5 years down the line you would like to own a home. They will help you through the process the entire way, and that includes all of our mortgage loan officers as well. Would you happen to know if there is one email where we can maybe just ask questions to mortgage loan officers in general, or should they be sending it to one of your 2 email addresses on the previous slide?
That's a really great question. So if you go to fortcommunity.com and you navigate to the lending, you can submit either an inquiry there, or you can submit an application. Even if you think that maybe you don't qualify, if you know that your credit is maybe a little bit less than that 620 minimum, but you just want to see where you stand, feel free to submit an application and one of us will reach out to you and look at your application, tell you what needs to be done. There's absolutely no silly question. You know, even if you are just curious about what options you might have, you can either email us directly, you can submit that online application, and we'll get back to you with options. Maybe I don't know, should I navigate away and show where you can find it on the website? I can do that here with everybody.
I've put the mortgage loan team page on the screen, but that is also a good thing to do, just to show them how to get there themselves.
Oh, and I can't find it there. And definitely there's, some people that would prefer to meet in person. We love meeting with our members in person, but if you feel more comfortable with either a phone call or with applying online, you can also do that as well. So if you go to fortcommunity.com and you go to that loans and credit, right here, this is where you can submit an application. You can click right here to apply now. And this will take you to our application page. You're going to put in all your information, those employment details, what you're thinking about using for the down payment. And then we can take it from there and guide you through all the different options that might be eligible or that you might be eligible for. If you're looking for more information, you can click here on our home loan section of our website as well. You can get to learn more about home loans, and then also get the contact information here for our mortgage team. Here's Brian right here. There he is. You can click right there and either send Brian an email, or there's his extension. You can dial him directly. So there's a lot of different ways that you can reach out to us. But of course, we're also available in person as well.
We have one last question in chat. If someone is a third-time home buyer, would they qualify for the grants that you've shown us today?
So definitely there's some limitations for the programs. Usually it's a time period, 3 years from the time of last home ownership to qualify for the grant programs.
And just to piggyback off of that, I know for the down payment plus one, for sure, I would need to look into the home consortium one. So Whitney had mentioned when she went over her home consortium grant that if you were to be selling the property or breaking the original terms of the grant, like using it as a rental property, and you needed to pay the grant back, that would make you ineligible for that grant again.
Yeah, really these grant programs are intended to help our community members that really want to purchase a home instead of renting, and they just need a little bit of assistance in that home buying process. So really these grant programs, that's who they have in mind. That's why they have the income limits. That's why they have the different periods of forgiveness, is because the purpose is really to get needy homeowners into the homes that they want to live in the communities that we serve. So that's why there's the different stipulations on the grant programs. Really great question.
I believe that is the last question that we have. So maybe here is where we're going to end the Home Buyer Happy Hour for this year. Thank you again, everybody, for joining. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Whitney, for hosting tonight. It has been, again, a pleasure to watch. Very, very fun, informative webinar. Even I've learned things, and I've seen presentations like this before. Part of that's down to the amazing questions that we have received tonight. If you have additional questions, would you mind navigating back over to where people can see your email addresses on the PowerPoint?
Absolutely. First time using a cursor. All right, there we go.
There we go. If you have additional questions, please feel free to email them right there. With that, we are probably going to end it. Thank you again, everyone, for joining. We will see you soon, or talk to you soon.